The not-so-Sahih Sitta, a closer look at Sahih Muslim. In Sunni Islam, there exists a well-known and highly revered group of hadith compilations, collectively called the Sahih Sitta, or the Authentic Six. These books are regarded by traditional Sunni scholars as the most reliable collections of the sayings, actions, and approvals of the Prophet Muhammad. They are often placed just below the Quran in terms of authority in religious matters. We've already dissected the first book in this list, Sahih Bukhari, and exposed serious concerns about its supposed authenticity. Despite the name Sahih, which means authentic or sound, Sahih Bukhari relies heavily on a single, uncorroborated transmitter, Muhammad ibn Yusuf al-Farabri. He's a figure with no contemporaneous validation, no endorsements from Imam Bukhari himself, and whose reputation only gained traction centuries later through the efforts of later scholars. Now, let's turn our attention to the second so-called Sahih in the collection, Sahih Muslim, often ranked just behind Bukhari in terms of religious authority. It is widely accepted by Sunni Muslims as the third most authentic Islamic text after the Quran and Sahih Bukhari. This compilation was put together by Imam Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj, a Persian scholar from Nishapur, modern-day Iran, who was born in the year 206 AH, nearly 2 centuries after the Prophet passed away. Like Bukhari, he never met any of the Prophet's companions, and just like Bukhari, none of the manuscripts of his work that were actually penned by him have survived to this day, not even a partial copy, not a page, not a paragraph, not even a single sentence. That's right, Sahih Muslim too is a collection with no existing manuscripts or fragments traceable directly to Imam Muslim. Everything we have today comes through intermediary transmitters, and unsurprisingly, this transmission chain has major issues. Here's the real shocker. Just like Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim boils down to a single primary student, Yakub ibn Sufian al-Fasawi. He is the main link between Imam Muslim and later generations, yet Imam Muslim himself never endorsed this man. There are no written statements, no personal notes, and no recorded affirmations by Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj vouching for Ibn Sufyan's role as a transmitter of his collection. And for those that don't know what this means in hadith sciences, this means that the person is not Thika, unvouched for, which makes him not reliable enough to accept hadith from. By the rules of hadith authentication, that alone should have disqualified his version from being taken as authoritative. So who then first vouched for this crucial figure in the chain? It was the famous historian and scholar Shams ad-Din Ad-Dahabi. But here's the catch. Al-Dahabi was born nearly 500 years after Ibn Sufyan died. That's half a millennium of silence on this transmitter's authenticity before someone finally said, yes, he's reliable. Think about that. A book considered the second most authentic collection of hadiths in the Sunni tradition is preserved almost entirely through someone the compiler himself never authenticated, and who didn't receive validation until half a millennium later. But it gets worse. Even with Ibn Sufyan, we don't actually possess any surviving copies of Sahih Muslim that were written by him. The earliest full manuscript we have is attributed to a man named al-Jandi al-Kirimi. That copy is stored today in an Israeli library and dates back to over 400 years after Ibn Sufyan died. And even that attribution is speculative. Scholars assume it's based on Ibn Sufyan's transmission, but no hard evidence proves it. There are a few partial manuscripts that claim to come from other students of Imam Muslim, but none are complete, and the discrepancies among them are far from minor. According to Sunni scholars, the differences are not significant. But when you examine these variations, some of them include missing narrators or incomplete chains of narration, issues that the very science of hadith transmission considers major red flags. In hadith methodology, an incomplete chain can render a narration weak, fabricated, or outright invalid. Now here's where it all starts to get even murkier. Guess who else shows up again in this web of transmission? Yes, it's none other than our familiar friend, Muhammad ibn Yusuf al-Farabri, the same controversial transmitter who is the sole link in the chain of Sahih Bukhari. Miraculously, he's also claimed to have been a student of Imam Muslim. And not just any student, he's said to have transmitted Sahih Muslim with such dedication that his version could have intermingled with Ibn Sufyan's. Let that sink in. The same person who supposedly single-handedly preserved Bukhari's magnum opus despite no contemporary endorsements and highly questionable credibility, is also said to have played a major role in transmitting Sahih Muslim. One man, two massive works, no original manuscripts, no corroborating endorsements. And all of this taking place over vast geographical distances between Bukhara and Nishapur, modern-day Uzbekistan and Iran, without any historical record of how he supposedly managed this feat. Did he take weekly flights, ride camels across deserts regularly? Or is this just another conveniently patched narrative constructed centuries later to keep the traditional storyline intact? Even Sunni scholars have had to concoct all sorts of explanations for how Farabri could have been a student of both Bukhari and Muslim. Some suggest he wasn't a direct student, but maybe a student of one of them. Others say he was present in the wider scholarly circles and may have simply overheard their teachings or picked them up indirectly. Yet Farabri himself claimed he was a direct student of Imam Bukhari. And not just any student, but the last surviving one. That alone gave his version of Sahih Bukhari the final stamp of approval. Now apply the same pattern to Sahih Muslim, and you start to see a trend. When you dig even a little below the surface, what appears to be a clean, preserved chain of transmission starts unraveling. The deeper you go, the more these unquestionable hadith collections begin to look like products of historical hearsay rather than reliably documented traditions. And just when you thought it couldn't get any more tangled, here comes another twist. Guess who else is claimed to have transmitted Sahih Muslim? Abu Isa al-Tirmidhi. Yes, the very same Tirmidhi who has his own hadith collection, Jami al-Tirmidhi, which just so happens to be one of the 6 Sahih Sitta. So we now have someone who's simultaneously compiling his own book and allegedly transmitting someone else's authentic compilation. It's a bit like Shakespeare writing Hamlet while also acting as the only surviving scribe of Plato's Republic, except without any original manuscripts, signatures, or verification. You can't help but feel that all of this starts to resemble a scholarly echo chamber, a closed network of names recycling each other's work and boosting each other's reputations, posthumously. It all starts to smell less like authentic preservation of the Prophet's words and more like a posthumous project wrapped in centuries of retroactive legitimization. So where does that leave us? The first two of the so-called Sahih Sitta, Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, are not as sahih as they've been made out to be. The cracks are visible. The blind faith in their preservation crumbles under the weight of scrutiny. And what's most concerning is that these books form the very foundation of Islamic jurisprudence, theology, and daily practice for hundreds of millions of Muslims. In the next part of this investigation, we'll turn our attention to the remaining books of the Sahih Sitta and see if they stand any better under the microscope.